This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus. I wanted to remind you that the show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to the show if he or she would like more information. Thank you. Good day. This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus, the show that gives you the best of reliable information on ADHD and dispel some of the myth information out there. Today my guest is Brian Friedlander, who is an associate professor of education at the College of St. Elizabeth in Morristown, New Jersey. He coordinates graduate programs in special education and teaches graduate courses in assistive technology. He's also the co-author of a book, Engaging the Resistant Child Through Computers, and maintains an active blog at assistivetechblogspot.com. Dr. Friedlander, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Dr. Pomeroy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we were talking before the recording about how can people figure out what are reasonable goals to set for using assistive technology, and there's certainly a wide range of things out there in terms of tutoring and learning strategies. So what are some goals that parents or teachers could set?
I think, when you kind of think about, a student in the classroom, there's certainly a couple of things, come to mind is, giving the student the capability of, access to text or reading text is certainly one of the main goals.
Mm-hmm.
Another big goal is certainly, the question is, how can I have my child write more, effectively, or how can I support them if they're poor spellers? And especially is true for students that may be diagnosed with dyslexia. The school day can be a very frustrating one when you consider the amount of reading and writing asked to do. And also just the physical aspect of writing for a lot of students is very, very problematic. So getting ideas from their head to paper can be a challenge. Mm-hmm. And I hear that a lot. I hear that parents say, my son or my daughter has great ideas, but they can't get it from their head to the paper. And so there's a lot of tools that we can, now use that are, integrated into, platforms like, Google Docs or even Microsoft Office 365 that can make the learning experience so much more pleasurable, for students
mm-hmm.
that have learning challenges. So I always like to look at what's available on the computer to begin with without necessarily have to buying anything else. I mean, if your school's a Google school, then let's look at the voice typing that's built into Google Docs for speech dictation or speech recognition. It's very accurate. It works well, and there's no training, which is really an exciting part of the technology because Google's been doing all this artificial intelligence and machine learning. It understands and contextualizes words, and the same thing is true for Microsoft. They've invested tremendous amount of time and money in bringing their Office 365 suite to the point where it also has speech dictation, which is very, very good, and they also have learning tools with the immersive reader to read text. So there's a lot of really powerful tools built into these platforms without even having really to spend a dime on anything else.
Yeah, the kids who have the problem writing, for instance, and one child I saw said, well, the CPU was working well, and he pointed to his head, and the communication, the printer stops about here, and he pointed to his elbow.
That's a great
which I thought was, good explanation.
Yeah, it is.
So those kids, they have the ideas, they can oftentimes express them very well when they're talking. Right. So that's where they could use the dictation ones.
Not to, and the other thing too to think about is that, writing with your voice is different, and so some kids, find it a little bit of a, challenge. Some kids are naturals at it, but other kids need to really to work with the teachers and need to be trained on how to use that process, because it's a little bit different process.
Yeah. Can parents do that in terms of, I guess, what would be the learning curve for a parent so that parent could help the child with it at home?
I think what I'd like to tell teachers is when they're working with kids and starting out with dictation for those students that might find it a little awkward is to work on kind of closed-end questions. So, for example, if the student has an assignment in a Google Doc and the question is, who was the President of the United States? It's easier to use dictation to say the President of the United States was George Washington, as opposed to doing something more creative, writing a paragraph. Start out with. So I kind of like to start out with kind of finite units that are very concrete, so the student gets some success and go, oh, I can do that.
Yes,
and get some practice. I want parents and teachers to understand that the writing process is can be challenging for some kids using their voice. For other students that need some writing support in addition to speech dictation, one of the other tools that we use is word prediction. And for some students that maybe have some more language processing challenges, maybe slower processors, word prediction can be a tremendous tool for them.
Word prediction?
Yes.
You're saying? Okay.
Yeah. So it would be similar to what you might find on your smartphone today.
Sure.
But programs like Co-Writer, which is from a company called Don Johnston, they've been doing this for 25 years, and they really have tremendous algorithms that really take into account the way students with dyslexia and spelling challenges tend to write words. So it picks up kids to spell phonetically. It does a fantastic job, and a tool like Co-Writer also allows teachers and students to load topic dictionaries into the application, so that if you're writing about evolution, you could load all those words related to evolution, so that when you type PAL, it may put paleontology in. So it's kind of it's using it looks like artificial intelligence to help bring those words up to the top.
Sure, suggesting which ones may be helpful or what to use next. And I think that certainly smartphones and text do that. So pretty much everybody's used to it.
Yep. And I think because the kids today are using smartphones, it's not as foreign a concept. It's a little bit more digestible. 20 years ago, it was hard to get students to use it. It was that looked like that was really specialized. Now today it's kind of common. Like everything, kind of predicts or anticipates what you're going to write. So it
tries to guess what you're thinking.
Yep, exactly.
How about for math? What are good tools for math?
So I would have to say most of the companies have focused more on literacy tools, but in the math area, some of the tools, so on the iPad, I still think it's probably one of the best. There's one called MathPad 2.0, and it was actually developed by parents who had a child that was dysgraphic, and they couldn't find anything else. They tried, the graph paper and the line paper, things of that sort, and it wasn't working. So MathPad basically would allow a student to basically do math probably through middle school, as if they had paper and pencil. So it actually puts the numbers into cells, and then the students actually show their work as if they had paper and pencil. It doesn't tell them if they're right or wrong, but it allows them to, complete
get it down there. Yeah.
Get it down there. And then on the Google platform, in Google Docs, there's a relatively new app called Equatio, and Equatio allows students to type mathematical equations as well as use their voice to input them, and then it solves them. The student solves them. It places them into Google Docs once they're done. It's it's a really interesting very interesting application.
Yeah.
Relatively new. And the exciting part is that the company Text Help that publishes that piece of that app gives subscriptions to teachers for free so that they can become comfortable with it. The students do pay. It's a subscription model, but it does give the apps to teachers for free, which is exciting. So it lets them, gain some understanding of how it works.
Right.
Then they can spend time with the student and teach them how to do that.
Just a question that comes up out of one student I saw who is now an aeronautical engineer, but her one accommodation all the way through her college was that she could have a calculator, because she could do linear analysis great, but 9 times 17 took a long time. So does that equatio include a calculator function?
No, it doesn't. But again, the whole idea is,
of course, you have to. You can have your own calculator.
Also, there's also another program, Desmos, which is basically a scientific calculator and graphing calculator that's available for the iPad and on Windows and Mac, and that would, and again, for a student that had difficulty, drawing a curve on a graph. I mean, this, they can plug it in and have it done. I think some of the exciting applications, again, hopefully used more for review, is something like photo math on an iPhone. And what that can do is a student could literally take a written problem on a piece of paper, take a photo of it, it scans it, and then it will show you the steps on how to, and the answer.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty powerful. But and also you can, again, you could then, hopefully the student does it and then, can check their work with it, but it will solve the problem for the student as well. And they can also point, the camera on the phone to a problem in a textbook, and it will do the same thing. It will solve it.
How about programs? I'm thinking more in terms of the early elementary years, just
early
adding, adding three-figure subtraction things.
Yeah, MathPad is fine for that, and actually, again, it will allow students to show regrouping. For young kids too, I like to use virtual manipulatives, especially on a tablet, so that they can actually, they can count, they can move, they can group, and actually, visually see it, touch it. And a lot of these, virtual manipulative apps also have tools, that they can, draw, group things and draw on it. Which is really fantastic.
Yeah.
The other thing too is, I'm going to grab this here. Just want to make sure. One of the tools that is kind of fascinating. It's called MathLine, and this is not. This is kind of low tech, but it basically is almost like an abacus with basically discs, but it takes the conceptual and makes it concrete. So, for example, it's basically an abacus with a line, and the students would see numbers on this. And for example, when they add 4 plus the individual discs are white, and every fifth disc is blue. And when you move the 4 and the 1, they'll see it's 5. So for kids that really need a concrete representation, things like that can be really
definitely
really helpful. And what's nice is it keeps everything very organized. I've seen kids use counters, and then because of their visual issues, one of the counters went outside their field of vision, and then they report the wrong number down when they have to record it on the page. This is in front of them. It's very concrete, and when they look at it, they can see. And this way, things are not falling off the desk. They can really concentrate on solving the problem. So things like that could be really helpful. And it was kind of interesting because I was having a conversation with one of my graduate students, and he was a math teacher, and we were both, saying that, that for a number of students, who said they were, I'll say, bad in math, a lot of them have, dyscalculia, and
right.
it really gets and I'm sure you see it too in your practice. It's really, it's an unrepresented diagnosis, but a lot of students do in fact have it. Yeah.
Yes. One thing that I wonder about, a question comes up, since teachers can use many of these things in the classroom, right. Parents are the ones that are either getting the tablet or helping them kids at home. How do you get teachers and parents on the same page or using the same apps? Or is it kind of the teacher finds out about something, tells the parents, or vice versa, and they just kind of work it out as they go along?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the best case scenario, of course, is it's written into the student's IEP, and then someone like myself comes in and does some training with the teacher, the student, and the parent, and sometimes the paraprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that model works really well, so that the student can be reinforced both in the classroom and certainly at home. I can't say it happens all the time. And then also regular follow-up, is really important. So some of the schools I work with, I'll set up a consulting schedule where I'll come in beginning of the year, do the training for all the teachers and the parents and the para, and then I'll follow up in 3 weeks and come back in and just try to problem solve. How are things going?
Sure.
And I might do that September and October, and then I'm not in there again until the end of December, unless there's an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, for some of the technology that maybe let's say more different than what the other kids are using, if it's more specialized, it requires that level of consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening is that, especially with Google platform or iPad platform or Microsoft platform, what happens is schools start to adopt a certain tool set, and once they do that, it makes the transition so much easier, because from year to year they add features, but they know how to maneuver around a Google Doc and know the accessibility tools that are built in. And one of the companies, TextHelp, has I'll say an application, but it's more like a toolbar, and it's called Read and Write for Google Chrome. And what it is, it's basically a toolbar that drops from Google Docs and is also available when you're on the web. And it includes tools like word prediction, text-to-speech, study skills tools, and visual masking tools. So, I mean, once teachers are used to using it, if they use it last year, they can use it this year. And
mm-hmm.
the exciting part about this technology is that, years ago when you bought an app and it got updated, you physically had to take a CD and get the reinstall. Now you open up the app, and then, if they add features, you get a little notification. We just added document comparison, and no one had to really install anything, and so that was always the bottleneck. There could have been some great features in a new, in a new version, but IT was not going to stop what they were doing to add it. But now it's immediate, so it changes everything. And the other part is, the big change too is the student doesn't have to use the same computer all the time. They go home, they log in with their credentials, and everything, all the tools come to them,
Right.
Years ago, IT used to, we used to give laptops or go install applications on them.
And you had to install them all. And
Yeah.
I remember my daughter put that in 6th grade, and all kinds of get the right disk. And so how does, once students using a particular tool, how does the parent know whether it's helping in terms of really learning the information, as opposed to they're playing on the computer and it may appear that the computer's doing it and the child isn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think that, certainly setting some goals and also doing probes during the school year is, just some example. Say we're going to use speech dictation as an example. Mm-hmm. We can say, okay, in September, the baseline is I asked, your daughter to, write a paragraph, and I got 5 words. Then we introduced speech dictation, and now I'm getting 25 words. So I think you could do it. You can chart progress that way, and I think observation, and also through teacher-parent, meetings could be helpful. But I think parents, hopefully, the child should be using some of those same tools for doing homework, especially if the school is using something like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams. The parents should be able to get feedback, in terms of how the student is doing. But I think hopefully they would see not only changes in their learning, but also changes in their attitude and, even in terms of emotionality. It's like, are they getting their homework done in timely basis?
They're less frustrated.
They're less frustrated. So I think parents will see some behavioral. They should see some behavioral changes too, as the students become more efficient in using these tools. But I think parents need to understand that these are just, and I often have to explain, these are not instructional tools. These are efficiency tools. And so, students still going to need instruction on how to write a better paragraph or how to, read with better comprehension, but it's going to allow them to be more efficient at performing these tasks. And that's the important thing to keep.
Certainly, and I know you've seen it, and I have, where the children are acting out, they're having tantrums, they're having behavior issues, disrupting class, whatever, when the bottom line is they're anxious about having to do this same thing again that they couldn't do well before. They don't want to be laughed at by kids or hopefully not called out by the teacher in front of the class or their parents getting after them.
Absolutely.
So that would be one measure. Yeah, he's getting down to his work and he's doing it and not so frustrated and acting out so much.
Yeah, especially for I work with a lot of students with learning disabilities and certainly dysgraphia, and if we can take the writing component out and add the computer for keyboarding, speech dictation, one of the strategies that has worked really well for me, especially for kids that have any kind of motor or fine motor disabilities, is the ability to, again, not that teachers should be doing all worksheets, but it's a fact of life. In schools, you're still going to do worksheets. So two things. One is, how can we scan the worksheet and let the student type on top of the worksheet in a digital environment? So we can do that, create a PDF of that, and then use tools that the student can type on top of. And then also trying to get teachers to move to electronic worksheets using something like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms. Then the student can type the answer. In addition, we know one of the accommodations that's probably the top of the list for most students, especially with reading challenges, is having the test read to them. Well, if you use something like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, you can use text-to-speech, and the student can do that independently. They don't need another adult sitting there reading it to them. They don't have to leave the classroom. So there are two benefits. One is they can do it independently. They can listen to the question read as many times as they want using text-to-speech, and then they can respond by clicking a multiple choice or typing into a box with whatever they need. They could have word prediction available. If it's appropriate, they can use dictation. So, with those two accommodations, scanning the worksheet and having them annotate, or hopefully teachers creating forms that are like worksheets, we can accomplish a tremendous amount. And not only the kids who are identified in the IEPs benefit, but you have kids who are not identified that would benefit. You have kids with ELL in their background that would benefit from those tools as well. So you can really be helping, the whole idea of universal design for learning, you can really be helping a lot of kids, in the classroom who may not be identified yet, or maybe English isn't their primary language.
Yeah, I think, and certainly, again, the obvious thing that shows up is the behavior, and those kids may not have been identified as having a learning disability, or sometimes the way schools define those, or gee, you aren't 2 standard deviations below the mean for testing, so you aren't disabled. Yeah, well, you still can't write a paragraph.
Or you can't read it.
Or you can't read it, exactly.
And in the content areas, I mean, it is kind of, I mean, working with the kids that have, difficulty with self-confidence, the last thing they want to do is have to leave the classroom and take a science or social studies test. So just the idea of them being able to stay there, take the test the same way everyone else is really it's a big thing. And I think, teachers, making those accommodations, having a technology to do it, really, I mean, can really change the trajectory for that child and other kids, who need accommodation, because then they don't feel like, oh, everyone's doing it with me, we're all in this together, and that makes
right. And particularly if the school is oriented, we're going to use the Google Docs and Google kinds of things, then everybody is using those. Yep, everybody's getting the Google Forms and the worksheets.
Right.
So it's not you're different, you get this, and because certainly kids don't like that part either.
Right. And if teachers need to differentiate and they're using something like Google Classroom, they can push out 3 or 4 different worksheets or 3 or 4 different quizzes. The students won't know. Everyone's taking a quiz, but they're taking it at their level. And then when they submit it, no one knows that they got different, quizzes or different worksheets, different material. So it really allows teachers to differentiate, in Google Classroom, so they don't have to feel compelled that everyone's getting the same worksheet or the same test even. So it's pretty. I mean, I think it's pretty exciting times. I think there still needs a lot of as a lot of education. Because the tools are there, it's really kind of, I think when I do my consulting, I really kind of help put the strategies, the tools are there. I have teachers kind of think through what strategies can we employ now that we have these wonderful tools, like what can we do with, what can we use them, how can we use them? And I think that you need like a go-to person in a school that has figure that piece out. Yeah.
I think of kind of an analogy of Outlook. Okay, you get an email, you open it up, and you decide, well, I'm going to make some folders and put those in. But I don't think most people figure out how to get it to automatically go in the folder, and something shows up that you got something new there. And gee, did you know you can drag an email into Calendar and make it an appointment? That's kind of thing that most people don't know. And so teachers can look at kind of what's the documentation about it, but having someone to explain how it really works and what you can do with all of it, I'm sure it's really important. So is there a good, I guess I was going to say print, but online just reference of here are the various programs like the ones you talked about and what they can do for you. So it's kind of all in one place and people can see, oh, gee, these are the ones for using the Microsoft platform or using the Google platform.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has tremendous resources and presentations. I think YouTube is a really great place to go. But Microsoft, if you Google like Microsoft and learning tools and immersive reader, you'll get some tremendous resources. If you Google Read and Write for Google Chrome, you'll get some tremendous resources for some of the text help apps.
Okay.
I mean, and then if you go to donjohnston.com, you'll learn about Co-Writer and Snap and Read. And, of course, Apple has some tremendous resources.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back. There used to be like a place on the web where it had a matrix of all these different apps. I just don't know if it usually
still is
by grants, but once the grants go away, you start searching and the programs are 10 years old, so it's kind of hard. But closing the gap, puts out every December a directory of all kinds of applications for everything that is.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know.
If you go to closingthegap.com, I believe if you have a subscription to their it's basically an online journal. I think they give you access to the database.
Okay.
It comes out in December. Yeah.
Well, we're at the point, as usual, where it seems like it's gone too fast, but I need to wrap up. And I wanted to just make some kind of summary comments or pull some of the key things that we talked about. And I think a most important one is that most of these things are efficiency tools and can help children with problems with writing. They can dictate things, but it doesn't teach them how to write the paragraph. There's some instructional part that's teacher's job. Another thing in terms of being able to use these programs is having them written into an IEP, which can then maybe that's a start for teachers to learn about it and parents to learn how to use it as well. And certainly, most importantly, being able to start with things that are already available without needing a separate program that's in Google Docs, in Microsoft Word, the text-to-speech and speech-to-text, and those kinds of resources are very valuable. So thank you, Dr. Friedlander. This has been a very informative session, and we appreciate your expertise.
It was a pleasure, and just let your listeners know I am available. I do workshops and professional development if anyone needs more information.
Okay, and the information will be on the introduction to the podcast, but Assistive Tech, ASSISTIVETEK, assistivetech.blogspot.com is where you can find Dr. Friedlander's ideas and information. So thank you very much. And this is Dr. David Pomeroy signing off for ADHD Focus, and we'll talk to you next time.